afternoon. I'm Isha Datta, SAS Woman of Kolkata, and I welcome you to yet another session of an Author's Afternoon organized by the Prabha Khaitan Foundation in a city that takes its literature very seriously. The foundation, in association with its associate Taj Bengal and SAS Women of Kolkata, is privileged to host this rendezvous with eminent personality, Mr. Amarjit Singh Dulat, who is the former head of the Research and Analysis Wing, along with Mr. Sohail Seth, who needs no introduction, especially in the city of Kolkata. Before the evening proceeds, allow me to say a few words on the foundation. Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a Kolkata-based non-profit trust founded by an eminent Indian literati, entrepreneur, philanthropist, social activist and feminist, late Dr. Prabha Khaitan. The foundation, through its glorious journey of 4 decades, has been engaged in showcasing the literary and cultural jewels of the nation. This amalgamation of the multicultural diversities of India has elevated and cemented the status of the foundation, which relentlessly works towards promoting literature, music, dance, storytelling, and performing arts through its boutique events and initiatives. The foundation has an active presence in more than 40 cities in India and overseas. It enjoys the patronage of Sri Cements Limited and is ably assisted by its distinguished associates, partners, and the SAS Women of India in its effort to create cultural capital. Out of all its literary initiatives, an Author's Afternoon holds a unique place as a series of enchanting afternoons dedicated to English literature. It aims to inspire and widen the reach and readership of English literature to literary enthusiasts worldwide. It is an honor for me to welcome and introduce Mr. Amarjit Singh Dulat and Mr. Sohail Seth. Mr. Amarjit Singh Dulat is a former head of the Research and Analysis Wing, India's external intelligence agency. After retirement, he was appointed advisor on Kashmir in the Prime Minister's office and served there from January 2001 to May 2004. During this time, he accumulated a vast reservoir of goodwill with Kashmiris of all shades. As Jane's Intelligence Digest puts it in 2001, well known for his social skills, Dulat preferred dialogue to clandestine maneuvers. In his heyday, Dulat was referred to as Mr. Kashmir. Dulat was born in Sialkot, Punjab in December 1940. With India's partition, his father, Justice Shamsher Singh Dulat, relocated his family to Delhi. After schooling in Delhi, Shimla and Chandigarh, Dulat joined the Indian Police Service in 1965 and then the Intelligence Bureau in 1969, where he served for almost 30 years. At IB, he headed the Kashmir group during the turbulent 1990s till he joined and headed the RAW. Dulat's first book, Kashmir, The Vajpayee Years, was published in 2015, followed by The Spy Chronicles, R&AW, ISI, and The Illusion of Peace in 2018, which he co-authored with General Asad Durrani, former Director General of Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence Directorate. Mr. Sohail Seth is a notable Indian businessman and columnist. He is the founder and managing partner of the consultancy firm Counsel Age India. He has a commanding presence as a columnist, actor, keynote speaker, and a TV pundit. Mr. Seth currently serves as the Chairman, Marketing Committees of Confederation of Indian Industry, CII, and Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, FICCI. He is also on the Experts Committee of the Indian Railway Board. So without further delay, let's get started. Over to you, Sohail, and request to please keep your phones on silent.
Yes.
Thank you, Isha. Whenever people in India introduce other people, I'm reminded of Bernard Shaw. His prefaces were always longer than his plays. I was worried that Isha's introduction might just be slightly longer than Mr. Dulat's book, but luckily it wasn't. But it's always good to be back in Calcutta. It's the cradle of civility, erstwhile cradle of communism. Kadir, it's no credit to you, so don't plan. I mean, you're one of the biggest dregs of human existence, but you're a sweet chap. He's an old friend of mine. I mean, of all the things that Kadir has been known for, intellect is not one of them, but he's a good learner. But having said that, it's always a joy to be here. when Mr. Dulat and I were speaking about other launches, I had the pleasure of being in conversation with him at the launch in Delhi, which, by the way, is a great city to have book launches, because in other cities you have to ask which is the last book you read. In Delhi, the question is, when was the last time you read? But Delhi has its own unique capabilities, which you will see. Many years ago, thankfully, Somnath Chatterjee had wit. He's now dead. So there was an ad in a Delhi newspaper which said, "Don't feed the monkeys outside Parliament House." To which I wrote, "But what about the ones inside?" So only a communist would serve a privileged notice, but it didn't matter because we got great Bengali food and we were arrested for a day. I mean, I was arrested for a day in Parliament. But in Calcutta, none of this happens. I mean, even if Mamata Banerjee arrests you, it's only for 3-4 years, but look at the hospitality you get. So I think coming back to Calcutta has its own unique advantages. And I'm delighted that Mr. Dulat has agreed. He was under a lot of pressure from some very famous doyens of literature connected to bookstores and confectionery stores in Calcutta, which he kind of moved away from. You know, and when the miner sings, you have to listen. But it's all good in the sense that he's here, he's with some really important, bright people, an ex-colleague of his who he has praised, which is again very rare in Delhi for people to praise their ex-colleagues, especially those who were senior to them. But he's praised you in the book, you must read it. So let's start at the beginning. I'm not going to get into the minutiae of the book because that would prevent you from reading it. But this is one of the finest accounts of what happened post-independence and what happened in two of the most critical states. One, of course, Jammu and Kashmir, and two, Punjab, which is an adjunct parallel story because that's where he found the love of his life, who to this day films him loyally whenever he's speaking or doing other things. There she is. So Paranji. So let's start at the beginning. You know, you talk very interestingly about your formative years, and in a very nonchalant manner, you also talk about the fact that you didn't very much care for education. You were more concerned about an all-round upbringing. It was the value system at home. It was the respect with which you all were treated, the way you treated elders. How were the early years, and how do you think the early years shaped the A.S. Dulat of later years?
Thank you very much. Thank you to the Prabha Khaitan Foundation and Taj Bengal, Mr. Sohail Seth, all of you here, senior colleagues, family, friends, everybody. Thank you very much. And of course, thank you, Sohail, for being here, because nobody can make people talk more than you can. And if I talk too much, just ask me to shut up. I thought we would start with Calcutta. But anyway, we can come to that later because you want to talk about my early years. Yeah, they were quite simple, straightforward. You know, I was at home in modern school after partition. And then my father said that he has to go to bowling, you know. His mother will spoil him here. He can't remain at home. And he consulted my brother, 12 years my senior, who had been to Doon. And he said, should we send him to Doon? So my brother said, Doon's gone to the dogs. I heard our friend Narendra say the other day that Doon is again gone to the dogs. I don't know how these schools go to the dogs. But anyway...
But it's produced such intellectual giants.
Yeah.
Rajiv Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, Sanjay Kapoor. I mean, these are the doyens of passing intellect in our country. How can they go to the dogs?
No.
They must have just locked up in a kennel. By the way, modern school, which he referred to, is a school, not to be confused with the bread.
So anyway, I was shunted off. I went to Bishop Cotton School, Simla, which in those days was a very good school. Today, I think it's possibly the best public school in India. In any case, it's the oldest public school. We can take credit for that if nothing else. And for those who have never heard of Bishop Cotton, actually Bishop Cotton was the Bishop of Calcutta before he took to education. And he decided to build schools in the hills. And he found this little hill in Simla. And that's where he started Bishop Cotton. Anyway, that's a long story. I went to school in 1951 at the age of 10. And I spent 6 years there. You're right, I didn't take education very seriously because the whole idea of a public school is to develop a rounded personality and to teach you other basic things. And I learned a lot in school, let me tell you that. Most of all, I learned that truth is important. And if you've done something wrong, put your hand up and say, own up, as we used to call it. And you don't, as we used to say in slang in school, you don't tit or tattle on anybody else. You know? And you do the right thing, and no matter who gets the credit for it, you keep doing the right thing. So these are very basic things that we learned in school. I was not one of the toppers or anything, but I've written in the book that ours was a irreligious family, so we were not initiated into the scriptures. But one scripture that one had to learn in school was the Bible. And believe it or not, I was exceptionally good at the Bible, with the result that in my sixth form or senior Cambridge class, I was awarded what was called the Urban Divinity Prize.
My God.
Exactly.
The bishops in Calcutta are very good at real estate. And some of them have had the most corrupt lineage across schools. So obviously times have changed from divinity to real estate.
Well, I haven't been in real estate, but it's a very educative stage of one's life. And I've narrated a little anecdote in the book. This is an opportunity to narrate that little story. When we went to Mount Abu, incidentally, my senior here, Mr. Shamal Datta, was with us in the batch. But he was always working hard and, maintained a low profile because, he wanted to get the best marks always, and he did. And he was best in our batch in marching and things. And we were, some of us, very rowdy guys, batch of us. And in fact, he used to say, you guys should take it easy. But there was a little incident early in our year in Mount Abu, that 4 or 5 of us decided to have a drink, and there was no drink available. So we went down the road to the market and bought a bottle of Tharra. Brought it up, and they came to my room because I was one of those guys who had a room to myself next to the mess. I think it was 138 or something like that. Anyways, so 5 of us, or 4 of us it was, that we were drinking this Tharra out of cups, teacups, because that is all that is available. There were not 4 glasses in the room. So we had this Tharra and quite enjoyed it till one of our friends got a little tipsy. He always did. But unfortunately, he went and made a mess in the mess. And the next morning, the whole batch was lined up by the assistant commandant, Mr. Burge, who abused the whole batch in the choicest Anglo-Indian language and said to you bastards, I know who you are and I will fix you. So that was that. And my friend, colleague, Arun Babbar had been with us, and he'd been with me in school. So I felt very uncomfortable at what I heard, and I went to Arun, and I said, Arun, let's go and own up. Let the others be, but you and I will go and own up. He said, are you mad? Huh? This is not BCS. Here you'll get dismissed. So I left it at that, and I went to class the next day, and I was telling friends here that I usually sat at the back, so that you could sleep if need be. And before lunch at about 12:30 or so, I got up from my seat, walked out to the class and went and knocked on Burge's door, which was just behind the classroom. And Burge said, "Come in, you bastard." So, "You finally decided to own up?" I said, "Yes, sir, I'm sorry." And he said, "Where's that friend of yours?" I said, he'd come. So he said, if you must drink with people who can hold their drink. So I said, "I'm sorry about the whole thing, it's this thing." I went back to class and I told Arun, I said, "I've gone and spilled the beans, I might as well go." So Arun went. And the net result of that, Shamal is here, he bear witness to it, that the two of us became Burge's favorites. After that, we could do no wrong, we could get anything done. So that's what school taught me, and it helped in life.
So then, obviously you had this parental, I wouldn't say influence, you had this parental indulgence, and you also talk about your abiding love for sport. And you often say in the book that, if you had an optional alternative career, it could have been that. When you decided, and at that time, so let's share with them your entire Calcutta experience, and what happened in Calcutta, and how, he was sent off to Cal. So why don't you tell them about the Calcutta thing, then we'll come back to the IB years.
No, I was never posted in Calcutta.
You came here to meet.
I was never sent off to Calcutta. But I'm glad you raised Calcutta because I love this city. They call it the city of joy, but like you said, it's civility, It's people here are so easy and so good, that very different from us North Indians. And I've loved this place. And I've been coming here since I was a kid of 12, And we had an uncle here, Nikki's here, my cousin. His father, who was a very famous tennis player. He was my mother's brother, and so we used to visit him almost every winter. And it was February 1953 that I came here for the first time. And I've been coming here over and over again, because then Poma, my sister, got married, and she came here and lived for 30 years. So there were so many excuses for coming back to Calcutta or Kolkata, but it's never gone out of one's mind. You won't believe, I could go on telling you stories. But let me say this, that when I began my career, coincidentally, in IB headquarters, I was allotted the West Bengal desk. And those were the days of communism, and you had to learn the basics about communism. And 69 to 71, I was looking after West Bengal, so to say, from Delhi. And I came here in 1970, and there was one of our doyens of communism, Mr. R.K. Mukherjee, was the joint director here, and I think he spent most of his life in Calcutta. He wouldn't come to Delhi. And when I went into the office to call on him the first day, he said, no, there's no need for you to come to the office. I want you to spend the next 3 days exploring Calcutta, every part of Calcutta. I want you to learn this. Because when we send you reports and you hear of Bagh Bazaar and Lal Bazaar and Metia Bulls or whatever it is, you should know what it is, where it is. So the next 3 days, I went around exploring Calcutta, learning about Calcutta, and I learned every nook and corner of Calcutta at that time. I learned. Maybe it was Mr. Mukherjee's way of keeping me out of the office, but all the same, it was a great education. And when I went back on the 4th day, he actually questioned me, okay, where is such and such place, where did you go, what did you see, what did you notice? The other day, I was driving down Charangi with my brother here, and I saw this bus, it said BBD Bagh. And for a split second, I said, what the hell is this? Then I said to him, that's Dalhousie Square, isn't it? He said, yes,
Well,
it is.
Binoy Badal, Dinesh,
Yeah,
who are
but-
freedom fighters, but they're unknown now to
Yeah,
all these.
so I knew it as the lousy square, so I said, so I got it right. And one learned a lot. Also, during that visit, I went to Siliguri. And that was the time of Charu Mazumdar and Kanu Sanyal. And things in Siliguri were pretty hot. Because I found after sunset, everybody had shut their doors. And there was, in those days, hardly any place to stay. There was no place to eat. I used to go to the railway station for lunch. And I used to ask for the train timing because that was the time we could get lunch on at the station. So it was that kind of thing. But one learned a lot. And as I said, I could keep telling you stories of Calcutta. Nobody would believe it, but we came here for a honeymoon. You know? And a lot of people said, why Calcutta? Why, very simple, because that's all we could afford. Yeah, all we had to do for a honeymoon was catch the Kalka mail from Delhi, come here, and then everything was free. We stayed for a week with my uncle, who was very kind. He gave us a room. And the last 5 days with my sister, who also was very kind, and made us sleep on the ground. So, but it was all free, and it was great fun. And I've been coming to Calcutta over and over again.
So let's just for the sake of time, let's cut to the early years in your career. You obviously talk about Shyamulda with great affection and respect. You talk about M.K. Narayanan, you talk about all these doyens who were there. And when you started your career, India was very much at the crossroads. And the 69 to 71 period that you're referring to was actually the most gruesome. It wasn't the communist, it was the Naxalite movement.
Yeah.
71 was when Satyajit Ray set dogs loose in the most abominable manner on people. He was the father of encounter killings. And it's ironic that the man was chief minister and a lawyer to boot. So you must read this outstanding disposition of Jhumpa Lahiris on what happened. See, UDF was formed in 1969, if I remember right, with Ajay Chakraborty. Ajay Mukherjee, sorry.
Ajay Mukherjee.
And 69 and 71 was when the hounding began. And it, no, Siddharth Shankar. Vedant Chandra was the first, I'm from Calcutta. So. Yeah, not Satyajit Ray. Just let's stick to, Satyajit Ray was also around, but he had nothing to do with the Naxalite movement yet. So, when we were talking about Calcutta being at the crossroads, when you started your career, India was also at the crossroads, as it is even today. What prompted you to accept the career that you did? And obviously you talk about it in very, glowing terms, in very warm tones, about how you began and the challenges. And then I want to quickly come to Kashmir, but first tell us about the early years in your career. Who were the people you met? What were the challenges? And what did you think you could have done or you did in terms of value add to the country?
Talking about my career, I did nothing by choice. I didn't join the police service by choice, let me be honest. I was hoping to make the foreign service, but I didn't. I didn't make the IAS either. So the third best was the Indian Police Service. And after that, I've been quite proud to be a part or a member of the police service. And when I came to the IB also, it was not by choice. My IG rang me up one morning and said that they want you in Delhi. I think it's good you go there. And the Home Ministry has asked for you. And when I came to Delhi, this building, I was overawed by North Block. And I said, my God, I was coming from a subdivision where I didn't have a house. I had a quarter attached to the police station. And I said, where have I come? And anyway, one got used to the place. And I was very lucky. I shared a room with a great man, M.K. Narayanan, because, both of us were in a way dealing with communism. He was, of course, the doyen of communism. He knew it on his fingertips, forwards, backwards, everywhere. I saw him function. He was 10 years my senior, and I couldn't take liberties with him. But I saw him operate, and it was great education. So that was the beginning. You're right, we were at the crossroads, because what happened in 71, I spent 4 years at headquarters. Normally you were expected to do 3, to learn the ropes, learn what a report was, what report writing was, what comes into from the field, what you do with it. So I did 2 years at headquarters, and then I was, on the communist side, and then I was posted to the other side, the right-wing branches. And I did 2 years there, and that again was a huge education. And that is when Mrs. Gandhi said that the IB needs to clear the cobwebs of its mind, because communism is not a threat. What is a threat is the right wing. And if you remember, that was the time that she banned the RSS.
Absolutely.
So that's when things began to change in the intelligence bureau. Now you mentioned Shamal. Shamal, batchmate, dear friend, we worked together. I owe him a great deal, I've said this publicly many times, and I'm saying it again, that I would never have headed anything. I would have been number 2 to him, very happily been number 2 to him. How happy he would have been with me, I can't say, because he always said that, you're far too easygoing. Which, that's the, I like to look at that way. But I didn't function that way, because whenever I did something, I always felt that I have to do it to the best of my ability. And I did it to the best of my ability. Maybe I was not good, maybe I was not good enough. But he got me into the RNW, he got me the job. And that's how I became chief. So I owe him a whole lot, and I learned a lot from him.
Yeah, but don't blame him. No, actually, there's a very interesting anecdote. In St. Stephen's, there's an event called the IDG, the Informal Discussion Group. Many years ago, I was invited to speak, and you have to go and sign the visitor's book or whatever it is. And there was Natvar Singh, who had written, "I am who I am because of college." Mani Shankar Iyer was the 4th or 5th speaker after that. So Mani drew an arrow. He says, "But why blame the college?" So I'm just trying to do the analogy there. It's interesting, and let's come to the political bit, because I have to say I'm not flattering people in Calcutta. There's a very heightened sense of awareness of the nation as a nation state and the nation as emblematic of sociological change. That's Calcutta for you. When you see the India of then, because that was also autocratic, there's no question. Many years ago I was asked by someone to write a piece, and I said the person who actually destroyed the idea of India was Indira Gandhi. She ruined every institution. And she ruined it to perfection. The current folks are, only bettering the course. When you look at India today, in comparison to the India that you joined in service, what do you think are the 2 or 3 most significant things that have happened? They could either be good for the country, they could be transformational, or they could be regressive.
See, this is a very difficult question for me to answer, even though I've left service long ago. But let me put it like this. Let's go back to Indira Gandhi for a start. I always felt that there were 2 Indiras. One up to 1975, 67 to 75, when P.N. Huxer was with her, and she was a centrist or left of center. I thought she did everything right. It was also the time when she went to war and won Bangladesh for the Bangladeshis. Right. But then I think once she lost Sanjay Gandhi, who was really her clutch, and she was never the same after that. I'm not attributing it all to the loss of Sanjay, but Sanjay was a great loss to Mrs. Gandhi. And then somewhere she came back with a thumping majority in 1980. I was in Kathmandu. And the Americans would keep asking me, the elections are coming up, it was just before I left Kathmandu. And they said, elections are coming up in in India, what do you foresee? I said, Mrs. Gandhi will come back comfortably. They said, no. Mallam actually had a bet with me. And he said, it's going to be Babu Jagjeevan Ram. I said, you're dreaming dreams.
Yeah.
Mrs. Gandhi will come back. And she came back with a thumping majority. But that Mrs. Gandhi was very different from the first Mrs. Gandhi. Because like you said, I agree with you entirely, that she destroyed just about every institution. And in the end, she destroyed herself.
Yeah.
Once she sent the army into the Golden Temple and Blue Star happened, she knew the Sikhs would never leave her.
You know, it's ironic.
It's this thing. Now the interesting thing here is that there are those two constables there in her own house who kill her. But till date, and there was a commission appointed, I think it was called the Jain Commission, to inquire into the assassination of Mrs. Gandhi. Till date, nobody is able to say at whose behest was she assassinated. And this is a story, I mentioned this in the book,
yeah.
in the book,
You have.
that we talk about so many things, but nobody is able to pinpoint or say who was behind the assassination of Mrs. Gandhi. Now, Mr. Kao, who at that time was her security advisor, and specifically looked after her personal security, has written a note, which is in the archives, and he said it should only be opened 25 years after his death. So I think we still have to wait about 10 years or so. There may be something in it, maybe nothing in it. But it's something which nobody knows. Yeah, coming to today's India, India keeps changing. It's a different India. Now we have another autocratic government, and we have a Prime Minister who is the most confident of Prime Ministers. I must be honest, I'm not a fan of his, but one can't deny that Modi ji is very solid, very tough, and it's very difficult to dislodge him because he has massive popular support. And thinking of India today, here being in Calcutta, you learn so much. I was reading Gitanjali for the umpteenth time recently. And if you read Gitanjali, for which incidentally Rabindranath Tagore got the Nobel Prize in 1913, and the introduction is written by W.B. Yeats, who was a friend of Rabindranath's.
Yeah.
And he says if you read one line of Tagore every day, you will learn enough. And actually, if you read Gitanjali, every line there is
gold.
Is fantastic. But there are two lines which I found very striking when I read it again a couple of days ago. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. And then a few lines later he says, into that heaven of freedom, my master, let my country arise. So what can be more beautiful than that? And then if you read Tagore, I'm surprised. In fact, Shamal once told me that youngsters now have forgotten Rabindranath. I said, how can you forget him? How can you forget Rabindra Sangeet? Ekla Chalo Re. I mean, those three words are full of meaning.
So he's absolutely
That
right.
walking alone.
But
Everybody in life, sir, has to at some time or the other walk alone and stand up for yourself. And what was Tagore's philosophy, spirituality, what was it? Courage, selflessness. And I think we are beginning to lose it. And I, reading that, I thought this is very pertinent for Kashmir. I'm not leading you on to Kashmir, but I'm just trying to tell you, because Tagore talks of hopelessness also, but he said you must never surrender to hopelessness. Now in Kashmir, the Kashmiri feels a sense of hopelessness. And I think it should be a textbook for students in Kashmir.
I used to do a lot of theatre And whenever we wanted to do a play adapted from any of Tagore's works, Vishwabharati, those scoundrels would stamp you down, and they had copyright over it. That copyright was released only recently. Now let me tell you a very fascinating thing about Tagore, and it's true. There are two polymaths that the world has seen, Da Vinci and Rabindranath Tagore. If you start copying everything Tagore did, you won't be able to do it in your own lifetime. He was that level of genius. Now you talk about Gitanjali, people talk about Rabindra Shungar. People forget about his art. People forget about, as you rightly alluded to, about his spirituality. People forget that he wrote some amazing short stories. I mean, I don't know how many of you have read Hungry Stones or Gora.
Gora.
People say Kabuliwala because, film was made up. So that's one. You talked about Modi. So in 1999, I was asked to work on Vajpayee's campaign. The line I gave was "Hum abhi atal hain." If you remember, it was after the 13-day government, and then Kargil happened, blah blah blah. While my briefing client was Narendra Modi. So, contrary to popular perception, he introduced me to Jaitley, not the other way around. Gotra happened on February 1 and 2, 2002. By which time he was already Chief Minister. He'd been Chief Minister for 1.5 months, dislodging Keshubhai Patel. I wrote 17 articles against him. September 8, 2008, I was launching the YPO chapter in Ahmedabad. And the reason I'm telling you this story is the mind of the man. And his guy called Sanjay Bhausar called me the night before saying, "Suna, Ahmedabad aa rahe." We had never met, we had never spoken. So I said, "Haan, kal. To aap bhojan ke liye aa jaiye." I said, "Bhojan to hoga nahi, because you won't get any booze and you'll get vegetarian food." So I said, "Main shaam ki chai ke liye aaunga." And I went. And this is not bullshit, because I've written an article about it. And it's been published also. When I reached his house, he says, "Suhail bhai, jo आपने लिखा था उसको आप थोड़ा अलग रखिए." And then he says, "I want to talk about Gift City. I want to talk about the purification of the Sabarmati. I want to talk about the solar panels, blah blah blah." Then he asks me, he says, "कल वापस दिल्ली?" I said, "नहीं, बॉम्बे." "रतन जी को मिलेंगे?" I said, "हाँ." "तो उनको बोलिए, ममता बनर्जी ने तो बंगाल से निकाल दिया है, तो आप नैनो गुजरात ले आइए." So I said, "See, I can tell Mr. Tata." You know what he says? He says, "आप एक और बात बोली कि जब पारसीज भारत पहली बार आए थे तो नवसारी आए थे, and the king of Gujarat sent them a glass of milk, which was to the brim, saying there's no place here. So they said, हम लोग चीनी घुल मिल के means we'll." Now hear this. September the 10th, Mr. Tata and I are sitting with Krishna Kumar, who sadly we lost. And I told him, I said, "This is what happened." He says, "He has said this?" I said, "Yeah." Cut a long story short, in 48 hours, the nano permissions were given. There was non-contiguous land of about 16 acres in this parcel of about 400 acres. The man was brought to Modi. The man was asked, "How much do you want?" He said, X amount. Modi said, "No, you take 20x. That vision created this. This Sunday, I had Nouriel Rubini, who's known as Dr. Doom, the man who predicted the crash, home for dinner. He had met Modi that morning for 3 hours. So I asked him, I said, "What do you think?" He says, "This man has transformed India's economic prowess across the world. Today, Germany is looking for help on digitization and digital payments." I mean, it is unbelievable what he's done. The flip side is, there's too much of right-wing noise, there's too much of... But as I said on television last night, it's not the job of Narendra Modi and Amit Shah to go to Khan Market to look for an opposition. I mean, you can decide either you want to walk or you want to win an election. As simple. But I want to come back because we have 10 minutes, and actually, we don't follow any time. This is Calcutta. To hell with 10 minutes and all. In any case, the boss of Taj is sitting here. It's not as if they've got any guests coming here after this. So, I mean, to this place. I now want you to come to Kashmir. I just want to paraphrase it. You've been intricately involved with Kashmir. You've been involved with all the key players. You know, you talk about Farooq Saab in the book, you talk about how he didn't give an appointment for so many days. When once you reach Kashmir, you talk about Vijay Dhar. And now 370 happens. Which, by the way, 370 was in the BJP's manifesto. So it's not as if they sprung a surprise on anyone. The other tragedies, no one reads manifestos. It was in their manifesto. What do you see of Kashmir today? And you have very glowingly talked about Vajpayee, where he talks about Kashmirians, he talks about all of that. As a person who has been formidable, both intellectually and on the ground with Kashmir, what do you see Kashmir as today? And what are the challenges and what are the solutions, if any?
Yeah, I'll go to Kashmir, but a moment before that, let me say that I think I made a couple of references to Modi ji in the book,
Yeah.
and they're all very positive. And I must narrate a little anecdote. You know, there was a function at the RNW. This was October 21, I think. Yeah, 16th of October, 2021. It was one of those investiture things. And Modi ji was to come and speak, and he came late. But he came and he spoke for about 45 minutes, which Prime Ministers normally don't. And I was sitting right in front, like Shaman is, and listening to him very intently. And he said something very interesting at the end, while complimenting the RNW. He said, in the agencies, हमको goodwill बना के रखना चाहिए. Very important. Now what happens? So that stuck in my mind. Now what happens? We go out, he is getting himself photographed with the prize winners and things, and we are asked to go to a big hall to have a cup of tea, and then Modi ji arrives, and those were the days when we were still in masks and things. And I was wearing a mask, and Modi ji comes up to me, and we've never met, and he said, Dulat sahab, aap kaise ho? So I said, मौज में है सर, और आज आपको सुन के बहुत कुछ सीखा. He laughed and he walked on. And so the next day, I rang up the Raw Chief and I said, congratulations, all the compliments, everything, this, that and the other, that the Prime Minister lavished on you. Can you do me a favor? I'm very encouraged and I'd like to meet the Prime Minister for maybe 15 minutes. But that never happened. And I've hinted that to many people around him, but it's never happened. Now what happens is that I walk with Rahul Gandhi. And I walked with Rahul Gandhi because he invited me. I didn't know him, I don't know the Gandhi family, but he invited me and I walked. And I quite enjoyed that walk, and I was quite impressed by the youngster. So everybody is saying, you walked with Rahul, as if he's not a part of the country, he's an outcast or something. I have become an outcast, I am anti-national, because I walked with Rahul Gandhi. This is the kind of sentiment you find in Delhi, not in Calcutta, but in Delhi. So anyways, just mentioning that. Now, about Kashmir, let me put it like this, that 370 happened, yeah, it was waiting to happen. My argument then, and I spoke against it then, I wrote against it then also, that this should not have happened. My argument was very simple, because there was nothing left of 370. It was only a fig leaf. Why do we want to remove that fig leaf? Why do we want to take that away? That last sort of feeling of dignity that the Kashmiri had. You could leave it there. Actually, 370 was finished in 75 when Sheikh Saab entered into an accord with Mrs. Gandhi and he surrendered everything. And he announced that accession was irrevocable. It's finished. Khalas. Yeah, but it was a part of the manifesto. It's happened. And the Kashmiri, after making a little noise here and there, is reconciled to it. So Kashmir is okay. what the Kashmiri feels today, and let me put it like this, that Delhi is following a so-called muscular policy. My friend Ajit Doval's policy.
Which you also mentioned in the
Yeah, I mentioned in the book, and it's working. Militancy has come down. And I make this differentiation between militancy and terrorism. It's my own. That terrorism comes from across,
Cross-border.
and militancy is our own homegrown
Absolutely.
boys. So militancy has come down. There were youngsters in the south towards Anantnag who were prepared to die. And they used to say, we are dying not for Azadi or for Pakistan, we are dying in the name of Allah, which is a dangerous sort of thing. But anyways, basic thing is the Kashmiri is reconciled to this thing. Now, we used to bitch a lot about separatism and this, that and the other. It's all gone. There is no separatist left. There's one man, last man standing in his house, the Mirwais. And I think he's sufficiently mainstream. We should get him out and use him. And we've wasted time in Kashmir on everything, including Dr. Farooq. And but the tragedy today, as I see it, the solution to Kashmir. Now let me tell you, let me clarify here. There is no permanent solution to Kashmir. There never will be a permanent solution to Kashmir. When we talk about a solution, what I'm trying to say is that we will have peace and we will move on. So the solution to Kashmir is staring us in the face. It's there. It's calling out, but we are not willing to move forward. We're not willing to talk to our own people, to our own mainstream. You want to divide the mainstream. And this whole business of divide and rule, and you're putting up puppets, pygmies who are not fit enough to untie Farooq's bootlaces.
Yeah, but then you see, Kashmir also has succumbed. Mehbooba Mufti went into a partnership with BJP. She should never have. She sold herself, and today she's at the vanguard of Kashmir ko bachao, Kashmiriyat ko bachao. All of them are bloody hypocrites as far as I'm concerned.
That's an old story, sir. That's an old story. I mean,
Yeah.
the Kashmiri hasn't forgotten that story. I can tell you that. But today, Mehbooba and Farooq and his sister and the CPM and all are together, and the Congress is on the sidelines. The Congress also hesitates because of this whole business of 370. Because 370 is gone, everybody knows, it's dusted, it's not going to come back. And but the solution, the thing to move forward is to have elections and
Yeah.
let there be an elected government and let the best man form a government. And I can tell you this, whether it's Mehbooba or the Abdullahs or whoever it is, nobody in Kashmir, not one single person in Kashmir, can function without Delhi, and the Kashmiris know it. So they have to be on the right side of Delhi. They are willing to be on the right side of Delhi. They are crying out to be on the right side of Delhi, and we are not accepting it.
Many years ago, I think Kamal Pandey was the Home Secretary and Mr. Advani was the Home Minister, not yet the Deputy Prime Minister. And I was asked for some soft power, and at that point in time we had talked about concerts and the integration. At that time, district-wise product marketing, which today Yogi is doing, the one district, one product. But I want to end by asking you, just related to Kashmir and related to other parts of India. I genuinely believe if you study the Constitution, and Ambedkar himself was disappointed with the Constitution after having, authored it. In fact, he gave a very anguished speech in Parliament, and we were never meant to have special powers for states or personal law or special status. These were inventions for appeasement of either communities or sections or states. We were supposed to be a democracy. Then you introduce the word socialist. Then you introduce the word secular. When Kapil Sibal was the HRD minister, he introduced education as a fundamental right. There's been enough of a mockery with India's constitution. And that's why I say Indira Gandhi was the architect of India's destruction.
Yeah.
The 42nd Amendment was one of the biggest blows to the Indian constitution. And we don't talk about it. And today, and I can say this, my biggest issue in today's India is people have stopped reading, people have stopped contextualizing, people have stopped understanding the historical perspective as to why things happen the way they do. You know, it's interesting you mentioned this. RSS is going to complete 100 years of existence in September 2025. You know how it began? It began as a front against the brutality of the Moplas in Kerala. No one knows. People don't recognize the difference. Nathuram Godse was never a member of the RSS. But the narrative, and here I will say, all our politicians have let the Indians down. They have tampered with history, they have tampered with education, they have tampered with the narrative, and today they're tampering with everything else. But I can tell you one thing. When I look at it from a perspective of industry, from a perspective of growth, economic growth at that, we have never been in a finer place. There's only one thing we have to worry. Social cohesion must not be sacrificed.
Mhm.
My worry is, by August, latest by August, India will have the world's largest Muslim population. We'll outbeat Indonesia. This city taught us the value of respect and dignity for all, irrespective of who you are, where you come from, what you do, what you drive, where you live. And I hope one day, like it used to be said earlier, what Bengal thinks today, India thinks tomorrow, I want to change that. What Bengal behaves like today, I hope the rest of India behaves like that tomorrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the only thing I miss, Suhail, in Calcutta, is those skirts on Park Street. You know?
Well,
The Chinese have left
but
the Anglo-Indians.
weren't you doing a session at Oxford Bookstore? It's pretty close to those areas.
That's why I've kept it for
later.
Because the skirts are missing.
Yes.
But
Fan train, trinkers. I mean, look at the civility here.
session and trinkers, you know.
You see, earlier sherry was a drink. Now it's Navjot Sidhu. This shows you the decline of India. You know, you had Omik Babu, you had Arup, you had great addas, you had soirees.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, people recognized
Yeah,
music.
and
People,
Pam, I don't know if you remember Pam Crane.
Pam Crane, Usha
sang at El Dorado. Do you remember El Dorado?
Well, I was too young. I mean,
Oh, you must have been
my hair almost as grey as yours, but the vintage is slightly different. Okay, we'll open it out.
Pure vintage.
Okay, very quickly, questions and answers. I mean, questions, you give me the answer.
He'll give you the answer.
But my view is, ask a question. If you want to deliver a speech, go to Victoria Memorial at 10 o'clock tomorrow. There'll be enough people walking after having their bloody kachoris. Or before they have their kachori. But one data point, by the way, you talked about Kashmir. We are having a Taj review. There's been an increase of 87% in tourism in Kashmir. Value tourism has gone up by 212%. ARRs that were of all hotels, I'm talking about houseboats also, ARRs which were between 2 to 3,500 have shot up to 9,000. The money is back. And I still remember, I mean, I loved him to death. When many years later I asked Mr. Gill, KPS, I said, how did you solve the Khalistan problem? He says, ek te goli mari, ek te fir khana bhi deta. I said, means? He says, we shot people, but we also made sure that they were healthily employed. That you brought the economy back. Today, Balwant Maan, because, you know, his happy hours start from 10 a.m. to about midnight. So I don't know what will happen to Punjab now, but that's for them to worry. So, any questions? That's the other good thing about Calcutta. They know when food beckons.
So, can I say a few more words?
Of course.
Yes. As I said,
And no one has anything to do. This is Calcutta.
Nobody has any questions? very
We want to
sad.
hear from you.
And yeah, I wanted to say a very special thank you to my friend Jayanto and his dearest wife Radha. You know, Jayanto was a very, very dear colleague. One of the finest I've had the privilege to work with. I'm not praising him. I don't like to praise anybody who's sitting here, but he was very special.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming, Jayanto.
Always a
And
pleasure, sir.
we have another colleague sitting at the back there, hiding in the corner. You're not supposed to let anybody know who you are, but I'll disclose his identity. He is the IB chief in Kolkata these days. And I
Look at this. It is like now if you go to Delhi gym, they tell you, we work for RNAW. I said, yeah, you're not supposed to be undercover. They said, but you guys are so drunk you won't remember the next day.
This guy is not undercover, he is very much in the open. And I only met him a few days ago, but he's a first class guy, you know, I could say that. I watch people and that's one of my hobbies apart from, you said, reading. I do read. That's why I read Gitanjali. I thought it would be pertinent for here. And I keep reading, and that's how I'm able to write, you know. A lot of the reading comes from, a lot of the writing comes from reading. But coming back to Amit, I was very, very impressed. God bless you, and I'm sure the organization, at least in Calcutta, is in very safe hands. And there's so many friends here. Marinder, thank you for being here. His family, of course.
Yeah. Mike.
This is Shamluji, I met her only today. But I pestered her so much on the telephone.
Yeah, Mr.
And, you know, and
She's a true doyen of Calcutta.
yeah, obviously, she is. I pestered her for more than a month. And a beautiful daughter who I met today, and took us for lunch to the RCTC. You know anything about horses? Have you felt horse flesh? I know what you think about other flesh, but what about
I've never
horse
been.
flesh?
You know, it was taboo in Calcutta in those days. Races were seen as abodes of
Bourgeois.
gambling. And it was meant for either the debauched or the rich, which we were neither of. So I still haven't got down to that level of debauchery or wealth. So I will never go to the race course.
No?
And you know, when you're members of civil clubs, why would you go to the races?
Anyway, she took me to the race club.
But now,
He'll watch what you
And
say.
but it's a fact. Why would I go to the races? See, I don't have to be scared of anyone. I think it's a waste of time, just as golf is.
Oh my God.
Well,
I'm the only person who didn't recognize Virat Kohli when I was introduced to him. So someone said, "Oh, you don't know him?" I said, "Does he know Michael Porter?" He said, "No." I said, "But I never watched cricket."
okay.
Shalodi, please ask.
Thank you for inviting us. I just wanted to know whether, have you written a book on Kashmir? Or are you planning to write one?
He's written one.
No, actually, my first book was on Kashmir. You know, when I left the Prime Minister's office in 2004, incidentally, I left not because I was, some people say I had to leave. I didn't have to leave. I left because the people who brought me there were leaving, and I thought it was just proper that I also leave. And therefore I left. And the press and media and all started pestering me to reveal things, to say things, to write things, and I said, no, I can't. Some of it is too contemporary to talk about, but some things are still happening, and I said, I can't talk about these things. But 10 years later, when I was freer of the government encumbrances, so I decided, I said, this brain is wrote with Asad Durrani, sold 50,000 copies because of the controversy attached to it. And I'm sure this book is selling all right.
And I remember he was kind enough to have me in conversation and do the reading. And look at the tragedy of Delhi. The anchor introduced everyone on stage, and you remember he forgot to introduce Dr. Manmohan Singh, whoever that joker was. And I said he will be remembered with such fondness and with such regard and respect. I still believe Dr. Singh has been one of our most formidable and most decent prime ministers. And I hope we have leaders like that
No doubt.
in time to come.
Now let me tell you about his decency. Dr. Manmohan Singh was always very kind to me. And I'll tell you a little anecdote here, which will tell you about the kind of person that he was. You know, when we were talking to the separatists in Kashmir, we reached a stage where they said, okay, we talked enough to you, what about the politicians? So we went to, Narasimha Rao was Prime Minister, they went to him and he sent me, he said, okay, you go and meet Dr. Manmohan Singh. Ask him to talk to. And I was taken aback because Manmohan Singh was Finance Minister. He had nothing to do with Kashmir or Kashmiris or this thing. But it just showed how much trust the Prime Minister had in Dr. Manmohan Singh. And look at Manmohan Singh's reaction when I went to him and I said, sir, we are talking to some people and the Prime Minister suggested that you meet them. And he said to me, does Farooq Abdullah know about this? I said, no. He said, but I think he should be informed. I said, sir, Dr. Farooq Abdullah doesn't need to know everything. But he was disturbed by the idea that we were doing something behind Farooq's back. So that's the kind of person he was. And on the last occasion, you know, when this 2018 book came out, I especially went to him. And I gave him a copy of the book and I said, sir, you must come. He said, you know, I'm not very steady on my feet.
Yeah.
So I said, you know, Claridge's is just
Next
15
door.
yards away or something. So he thought about it for a moment and he said, okay, I'll come. And he came, not only did he come, but he brought his wife along.
Yeah.
And I was extremely, extremely touched. Now I wanted to thank him. And I didn't know how to do it because, you know, just to go back to say thank you. So I called him up. And this secretary put me through and I said, sir, I just wanted to say a very, very big thank you to you. I can't thank you now. He said, no, you don't need to thank me. I learned a lot that evening. So that's the kind of person he is. You know. Unfortunately, now he's not in the best
Not
of
in the
health.
best
Yeah.
way. But I have to say, I mean, you know, as someone who's traveling across the world and seeing, you know, industry at close quarters, I genuinely believe that we are at a glorious time of our history. As I said, if our social issues can be sorted, as I'm sure they will, there's nothing to worry. We're an unstoppable force. And I don't say this, you know, in passing jest. I say this with everything that you see. Nuril Rubini said 7%, 2047, India will be the top in the top 2 economies in the world. And I genuinely believe that it's people like you, people like Shamulda, Amit, right?
Yes.
People who've actually given up everything they had for the service to this nation. My only regret is that the nation is not as grateful as it should be. And if we can get gratitude to return being our birthmark, we'll be a better people. On that note,
Let me tell you about gratitude. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
you.
no, I'm.
You know what this thing in Britain is, what the tradition in Britain is? The MI6 chief gets 5 years and a knighthood after that.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, what can one say?
You said it all anyway.
But we've had more than our share of gratitude. Don't
And
worry.
can I tell you, look at the body of work. I mean, you know, Dulat Saab's, this is his 3rd book. I keep telling people in industry to write because, to my mind, that chronicles history, uncolored, untampered with. And I just hope we continue to do that. And we continue to chronicle. And I hope people in Calcutta continue to be quintessential Calcuttans, uncorrupted. You know, many years ago I wrote an article and I ended by saying, in many ways, Calcutta is not Jane Austen. It's pride without prejudice. Thank you and have a splendid evening.
Thank you.
As always, thanks a lot.
On behalf of Prabha Khaitan Foundation, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Mr. Amarjit Singh Dulat and Mr. Sohail Seth. I'd also like to thank our patron Shree Cements Limited, Associate Taj Bengal, and media partner My Kolkata. And of course, you are amazing audience. No event can be successful without a receptive audience. So thank you all for your presence here today. I would now like to request Mrs. Shamli Duleja, please, to felicitate Mr. Amarjit Singh Dulat. Felicitate Mr. Sohail Seth. He's feeling left out. And before you all leave, there is high tea across in the chamber.